to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
Welcome back to episode 31 of the Leo Training Podcast. This week's guest is three-time Olympian and four-time world champion Bob Kaehler. Bob was a mainstay on the United States men's national rowing team throughout the 1990s. In this episode, Bob and I discuss his training philosophy, what it's like training under three different national team coaches and the approaches that they took and results, and his current training philosophy and what he's learned over 20 plus years of being a physical therapist and endurance coach. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's brand new episode with Bob Kaehler. Bob Kaehler, welcome to the Leo Training Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come onto the show, share your experience and wisdom with the rowing community. I'm very, very excited to have you on here. Bob, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast, and look forward to sharing some wisdom and experience I've picked up along my 43-year journey in human performance. I think that, I kind of figured that out when I was 9 as picking up my dad's running. I used to run with him as a kid just to test myself. I liked testing myself to see how far I could go. And I think there was a natural unfolding for me personally getting into rowing, because that's one of those sports where you're always pushing the edge of performance and, testing your abilities, So, and that kind of got me into physical therapy. I started doing that. After I graduated college, I started to try to make the national team in rowing and ended up getting injured, construction injury. And it kind of was like a way to it got me interested in physical therapy, actually, because I was rehabbing, trying to win the South Jersey Lifeguard Championships. For those who don't know that's a very prestigious thing for lifeguard rowing, and I actually did win that, so it was a pretty cool segue.
Nice.
But it kind of got me into the medical side. That was back in 91, and I graduated from Columbia in 91 with a master's in physical therapy, and then I immediately made my first senior national team with Igor Grenko, who was a Russian coach who had some crazy, crazy ideas about training. And so from that point, it just, like, those things just unfolded. I was the guy asking all the questions. My teammates had all ended up on Wall Street or wherever, could care less. They just were like, when are we eating, sleeping, and watching the movie? And I was like, well, wait a minute, we're doing this stuff, and like, why aren't we getting any faster? And there's so many injuries. And, so I was always the guy, like, just saying, look, you got to show me why this works or it doesn't work. And so I think over the years, that's been my primary drive, is to make things way more effective, way more powerful, way more efficient. And I was fortunate. I worked at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York for 10 years, working on site with top spine guys every day. And I have my own PT practices affiliated with that for 8 of those 10 years. So, that was kind of later in my career. Before that, I was at Penn for 7 of my first 7 years. I was at University of Pennsylvania. Again, just top places to work and learn and be around a lot of different medical professionals, surgeons, rehab medicine docs, clinical rotations. So, you just pick up a lot. And then in that same time frame, I also became a CSCS in 97 when I was still on the team. I retired in 2000, so I was also looking into those elements of performance also, because we were doing these things, as an athlete, but even at the Olympic Training Center, they really couldn't answer some of the questions that I had, so that got me intrigued to pursue that realm and explore, the questions I had that they couldn't really answer, or give me a specific reason about why we're doing this, and this. And
what are some of the questions, if you if you can recall at that time, like, that were coming to your mind when you were at the training center that kind of were burning in the back of your mind that you wanted to have a little bit more transparency or clarity on?
I think one of the things one of the questions that I had, there was two things. One is performance didn't change with massive weightlifting. I mean, literally with the Igor Grenko system, we would do like 1,500 reps in a workout at 70%, 75% of your body weight. I didn't get any fast, zero. Like when I say 0 seconds faster on my 2K, I got 0 seconds faster. So I was like, it's a massive, expensive neural energy, and I'm not getting any faster. So, and half the guys are getting hurt. So
Right.
that was one of my questions. The other was, we're not doing any testing here, and we're just strength training, and we're mostly duplicating the muscles we use in the rowing stroke when we do our strength training. So I was kind of like, we already do this when we're rowing. Do we need to just do more of this? With the thought that, you need to get stronger in those same muscles that are the primary movers. But I was also asking, like, if we're doing this, why is there so many injuries? Why is there such a high injury rate? There shouldn't be any injuries, really, and that was before, I have to say, that was really before I came up with those questions. Now I understand why, but I was starting to ask those questions. And then I went through and took all the Gray Cook's courses back in 97, Shirley Sarm. I took all those courses back then, but I noticed that there was an error in what they were, teaching great stuff, awesome stuff, but there was still missing that element of, if you haven't trained that hard for that long, your questions are never going to be as good. That's just my personal opinion.
Sure.
You have to have this experience on the inside to know, you can read books and coach people on the outside, but I think that was kind of why I was asking these more kind of, I don't want to say convoluted questions, but they were kind of like, hey, I really don't, it's not connecting for me.
Right. And you're speaking specifically to training at the elite level, just so the audience is clear.
That's when because I was in that realm. I was living that world every day. I was already practicing PT during that whole experience, and then became a strength trainer because I wanted to know more to know more professionally about why we were doing these things, because coaches just give you whatever they learned. It wasn't like they actually had necessarily any science or logic behind it. They just learned it from the last coach, so they just passed it on, And so you can win with a lot of different methods, and that's what I also discovered in rowing. Like, I won World Cup medals and World Championship medals with completely different systems. So then you're asking the question, well, so what, how does this unfold? And so again, that's what drives me to do what I do. It's like, I want to know why, and I want to get the results every time. I don't want inconsistent results, and I don't want to know that I'm not doing my job, to unfold those things that really work or don't work.
Right. No, I love that. I mean, that's, I have that same natural kind of curiosity. It's like the asking the questions isn't to kind of question where this is coming from. It's to understand the sort of the larger picture of how it fits into the system and the inherent benefit of how it's going to help.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right.
Awesome. So you train under, just correct me if I'm wrong, three different coaches, right? During your time on national?
There was some other people, like Korzeniowski was influential, and a little bit of Ted Nash, but mostly it was Igor Grenko, Mike Sprackle, Mike Tatey were my primary coaches.
Right.
But, we were also around the Olympic Committee, the guys at USOC, the strength coaches, and, with Fritz Hagerman was, very influential. So there was a lot of different people. And I sat around, when we did these training camps in Colorado Springs, I was there in JT Kearney's office every afternoon asking him a million questions back then. I was, we'd still talk about it to this day, that. Like, I would just sit in there, like, pick his brain. I wanted to know what he was doing, why he was testing, just out of curiosity.
Right.
To understand what was really, why we were doing what we were doing, or why they were questioning what we were doing. Right. They seriously questioned Igor Grenko's training systems,
Absolutely. So could you, you touched on Igor Grenko's system a little bit with,
which worked great. Like, he had a good system. He won a lot of medals. So I'm not saying it was right or wrong. He did a great job. I just was questioning just out of curiosity, not out of, I liked Igor a lot. He was an awesome guy and a great coach. I learned a ton from him. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to preface that because he was a very influential guy in my career. There's no question about it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm glad you clarified. So could you kind of provide, during your career, Mike Spracklin and Mike Tatey, sort of some of the differences in their approach to the training methodologies compared to Igor's system? So that way it kind of provides a nice overview for the audience on your experience over the course of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a nutshell, if you had to distill it down, like Igor Grinko was about, we would literally spend 9 hours a week on moderately heavy weightlifting with very, very high volume. It would be one exercise you do 220 reps, but it was at like, let's say it was 165 pounds per rep. And then you would do that 6 different exercises or 7 different exercises in a workout. And it would just, and then the same with the rowing. He would do long volumes of rowing. We do 25-mile rows in a single in a workout, once a week, which is, it's a long, long row,
Right.
3 hours. So we did lots of volume of stuff. And then we did some specific, towards the end, he would do some speed, we'd add the speed work in, and he had like charts and, it was intensity driven. So that was his system. Mike Spracklin's system was more like you just raced all the time. It was really like you were basically rowing at threshold pretty much every workout. Whether you're rowing 20 strokes a minute or 30 strokes a minute, you were just going as hard as you could go almost to create maximum efficiency as a rower. So if you were really good as a boat mover and had very good natural skills, you could survive all that. The guys who were not as efficient would end up getting beat up and they would struggle because they couldn't repeatedly do it over and over again. So that was more a lot of volume, but also a lot of intensity on the water.
Okay.
The weightlifting stuff was almost, he didn't care about it. He didn't really care about it. We just, the USOC, when we were in Chula Vista, he just sent us to the training room and we would do whatever they told us. But I don't think he really viewed that as the primary concern. We would do it, I think he felt it was important, but it wasn't like a priority for him.
Okay.
And I think Mike Tady's certainly was much less volume. Like if you looked at those two guys, but he looked at like super quality and technical application of movement was his real concern. Like he taught you how to connect everything together. Like, and so they were different in that way. So when guys would complain about training volume in the Mike Titty era, I would laugh. I'm like, this is easy training. The volume is like half of what we would do, maybe even less, And so I just felt like Mike got more quality at what he did, and he spent more time on maximizing your efficiency in a stroke by teaching you, doing all massive amounts of drill work, just tons and tons of drill work. Which worked, obviously I won a lot of medals with Mike. So,
sure.
And with the least amount of effort, by that point in my career, I really wasn't training that much volume wise.
Right.
I cut down to get the most out of what I did, and I was the only guy at the time. I was the only guy who was married, had a wife, house, and, and I was working full time as a PT. So to me, it was like, I just go in, do my job and then leave and go back to my life and then come back and do it again. Those guys that I trained with were all like out of college, just rowing full time. So they had a different mindset. To me, I was like, what's the least I can get away with to win? Right. Like super quality, but not wasting time doing stuff that's not getting any benefit.
Right. The minimum effective dose.
Pretty much like that's how my business is totally driven on that system. Still, to this day. It's really been the primary question I've always asked. I didn't realize it till later on that that's really how I approach everything I do.
Yeah, no, that's unbelievable. So just to, again, provide some more context, that was over a course of 12 years. Cause I think you said 90 or 91, you got your master's in physical.
Yeah, 91, I graduated from Columbia. I made the World University Game teams in 87 and 89.
Okay.
I failed to make the Olympic team in 88. That's when I got hurt. I went back to the Jersey Shore for one more summer. I was in incredible shape, but I broke my arm and dislocated my shoulder. Oh. A buddy rehabbed me. I went on, took the cast off after 3 weeks. I'm like, you're not keeping this cast on me. And I went and won the South Jerseys. I'm like, there's no way you're keeping the cast on me for 6 weeks. I'm racing, and then that just drove me into the PT thing. So I'm like, hey, my buddy helped me rehab. He was a lifeguard also, but he became a PT. And I'm like, hey, I could put this all together. I'm never going to do chemistry. I just didn't have any real passion for it. But,
sure.
It just kind of unfolded. I could have went to medical school and I would have given up on all the rowing stuff. And I'm like, I could always go back to medical school. My thing was like, I can get done with PT school and make the Olympic team. So that's kind of how it happened, which turned out to be perfect.
That's incredible. And it's unbelievable that, over from 91 when you completed your master's to 2000, you were training at that high of a level and, married, house, and working a full-time job.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, in the last 4 years, like guys now today, like, because they were all 10, 12 years younger than me.
mm-hmm.
I had my daughter in 99, in December 99, and I was working full time, so like I had a baby, we trained for Sydney. I'm working 40 hours a week. I got a baby that's up half the night. I'm getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep.
Wow.
And now that once they started having kids, it's like, I don't even know what you were thinking, about training and all, but.
Oh man, that's incredible. So I got to ask, because I'm a South Jersey guy. So what beach patrol did you work for?
Cape May.
All right. Okay.
The first, my buddy who's passed away, Kevin Murphy, and I were the first South Jersey champions ever for Cape May in 80 years. At that time, it was 80 years. So it was a big deal down there. They were all excited about it.
Awesome.
But for those who've never seen the South Jerseys, you have to go at least once in your lifetime to the South Jersey Finals. It is unbelievable experience.
Yep.
Unbelievable. It's better than rowing as far as like just the amount of people and energy when you go watch a race.
Oh yeah, it's
fabulous.
It's a big party on the beach.
Huge. I mean, and you think about like the athletes that are on those teams are incredible too. It's just on our beach patrol that year, Bill Pilzik was one of our swimmers. He won the Pan Pacs. He beat Popoff in '98 in swimming. World swimming champion. He beat a gold medalist. And then we had my buddy Kevin was also on the national rowing team. And then we had our 2-mile beach runner was 5th in the Olympic trials in 10,000 meter runs. That's just on one beach patrol. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's what the South Jersey is, an exceptional amount of top athletes.
Yeah.
So we won't divert too much, but
no, it's awesome.
I learned a lot from that too. That was a learning experience,
Yeah, a bunch of my friends were on the Ocean City or Longport or Ventnor Beach Patrol, so I would go down and watch the South Jerseys. It's incredible, a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's good
time. Okay, so from there, can we kind of talk about? You mentioned a lot of the during your time on the team, under Igor Grinko's system, there's a lot high incidence of injury, and then I'm sure under Mike Spracklin and Mike Tatey, injuries were occurring as well. So what just providing an overview to the audience, what are the typical injuries that you saw your teammates have, due to the sport of rowing, and then from that, what did you learn in terms of rehabilitation?
Yeah, I mean, I think in rowing, low back issues are always the crux of it. There was also rib fractures, and with Igor's system, there was some more knee injuries than the other two, because we did a lot of those like loaded single leg squats, and like we just did so many squatting movements under heavy load. It was and then you're rowing a crazy amount. You just think about the reps you did per week. It's like 30,000 reps a week on your legs. So there was. Wow. I'm just guessing on the number, but it was a lot. So. Right. I think you saw more in that. I think with Sprackles, it was kind of the same back, a lot of back, stiff backs, sore backs. Some guys got, occasionally got some extensor tendon injuries, things like that would show up. I can't recall if there was any rib fractures with Sprackle's system. Mike's system was the same. A lot of back, a lot of guys who weren't wrapped around their backs all the time,
Right.
Stuff like that.
And those are typically, those three are, especially the low back and rib across the sport, are two of the most common injuries that occur. And the one I wanted to ask you too that I'm starting to hear more and more about lately is labral tear in female collegiate rowers.
Sure, lots of them.
So I was wondering if you had sort of any insight into why, potential causes of why that's happening. Because that seems to be happening at a higher incidence in the last few years.
Well, I mean, this could take this is like a 2-day seminar for me, but I'm going to distill this down kind of quick. I think one of the things the disadvantage a woman has in the sport of rowing over a male is that women have way stronger legs than men proportionally. But so if you look at anatomy and power in a female, they're proportionally much stronger than not much stronger, but it's stronger than the male. But they also have a smaller abdominal wall system because of you have a wider pelvis and then you have a descending abdominal wall. So some women who have wider hips are even worse. And then they tend to have weaker upper bodies proportionally than a male. Now there are some coaches that are changing that, and things like, if you just look at how CrossFit's evolved, that you can see that the women, even on, the women's team, that the girls are becoming more like, they look more like a male physique on their upper body, just much stronger. So but the issue really becomes, if you're doing all this strength training and you're making the legs and the quads and glutes even stronger, it actually puts more stress on the other areas, which low back and the hips fall into that realm, because the athlete actually doesn't have the proper control of their trunk system to take all that power and connect it through. And that's the error. That's the error in all sports, though, because I do this system. I've done a system with NFL players and, tons of national team rowers, more than 150, probably more like 200. I have 2,000 evaluation results in my filing cabinet in my office here over the last 8 years. I've done many at all levels. So, and I have worked with a bunch recently with hip problems. Some collegiate athletes that completely resolves when I go back and teach them this control system. That's the primary part of my business. It disappears automatically because you're then focusing on what the missing link or the weakness is in the athlete. And you kind of don't worry about the things that are already way stronger than everybody else,
Right.
But the problem with a lot of the training out there is it's duplication. You're just duplicating what already is the way ahead of everything else. And, it's like something's going to break down when you use that. I call it the right exercise with the wrong application, the wrong body application. So when you do that, it's like, it's not when you're going to get hurt. It's not if you're going to get hurt. It's like, when are you going to get hurt? When is it going to become too much intensity or volume to get hurt? Which, in my opinion, should never, ever happen in any athlete if you're progressively building yourself up over time.
Sure.
If you slowly add load, you should never get hurt.
Sure.
That's the truth of the matter,
Right.
And so if you went and did something you hadn't done in 10 years and you did like 3 hours, well, you might get hurt just because your tendon integrity sucks. You haven't built it up over time.
Right.
But if you're progressively loading at a slow rate, you should never get hurt.
Yes.
That's my system. And that's what I believe in. I know it. I don't even believe it. I know it's just the way it is.
Right. Right. So in regards to the labral injury, do you find, besides the gender differences that you mentioned, is it sort of contributing as a factor is a lack of hip mobility, or the ability to, like you said, make sure that the torso is stabilizing so you have that distal mobility across the body?
Well, I mean, again, these are the views that I've paid close attention over the years, and they're my beliefs. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I just get the same result every time, so I'm pretty sure it's the right system. Mobility and strength are really the same thing. So when an athlete, so I'll just break it down real quick. If you look at the body as two components, the brawn is the legs and arms, or what I call the dumb stuff. So you got those four components. The brains of the system really is your spine from your Adam's apple to your tailbone. That's the brains. There's only two ways you can operate that system. All humans only have two options. You can operate your spine like a chain system. So if I put a chain on the floor and I lift one end of the chain slowly off the floor, it might be 10 or 15 links before I can get the middle of the chain off the floor. That's the chain system. If I use a straight bar system and I put a straight steel bar on the floor and I lift one end of the bar slowly off the floor, the whole thing lifts off the floor in a one-to-one relationship. That's the system that you should be using, but it isn't the one people choose to use. And the reason I know that, so when I test athletes, I can tell when they have weakness out in the dumb stuff, I know that their back is doing the work for those extremities. And so they stay weak, and then you're putting abnormal stress on those joints. Let's say it ends up being the labrum or the back. So a lot of times those people that have labral tear also have back stiffness. Because in the chain system, you really, when you move the extremities, you're also using the back to do moving work with the extremities. Right. So everybody's moving. And nobody's really in control. So it does generate force and it does work. It can be a pretty powerful system. You just watch you can watch tons of YouTube videos or Instagram accounts of people deadlifting with like massively bad form. And like, I'm just waiting for their back to pop.
Right.
Like, can the human body take it? Sure. It can I've seen it take lots of abuse with the Ego Cranko system, but you really want to optimize that for the athlete. So once they start to master control, that abnormal stress, or what I call unstable stress, just disappears, and those things correct. Now, if you had a tear and it needed to be structurally corrected, it may be, you correct it, but you also eliminate the original source of the problem. That's the solution. Doing a labral repair and then going back and doing the same wrong application, you're probably going to get hurt again.
Right.
And so so the net of my business is to never go back to that. You've been making the error. It just happened to manifest into an injury. I've never seen anybody not making the error yet that I've tested. I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that don't have it, but I haven't seen anybody yet in 2,000 athletes that I've tested.
Incredible.
And that includes NFL guys that have played NFL, for years. Same thing, same errors. And they were getting hurt doing like box jump, getting a chondral lesion. I'm like, really?
Right.
It didn't happen. Like, that's just a simple movement. Jumping up on a box should never blow your knee out.
No.
That shouldn't happen. That's right. If you have a balanced body, that would never happen. Anyway, so that's kind of so those injuries do come up, and they show up in this, what I call a two moving part system. It's going to either show up in the extremity or the brawn or the spine or both. So I'll get 1, 2, or 3. So a rib can't count as like kind of, I call that the spine also. So that's like a back injury.
Right.
So anyway, those things just show up because where they show up on each individual is different based on their own nuances of imbalance. But it's once you change the application of the system, everything changes.
Okay.
So those injuries go away. So an example, quick example, I don't want to delve too much, but like I had a girl from a top Ivy League school come to me last year. She was a 723 erg out of high school. She got to 718 after her freshman year, which is usually when you get the biggest change when you go from high school run to college run. Your freshman year is when the volume and intensity go way up and competition goes way up. She came with chronic hip problems and back problems. Like, she limped through the season. She went through my hands-on process, twice in the summer, and then she went back and used my system. And there was 2 other teammates that came to me on her second visit. She brought them also because she saw what was going on. She went from 718 to like a 657.
Wow.
And the other girl went 713 to like 650 something, same thing. Because you're just optimizing that. And no injuries. She made it the whole year this year, no injuries.
That's great.
So that's kind of really the crux of what I do is, and this works for every sport, not, you're talking about running, cycling, it doesn't matter. It's the same. I've done cyclists, runners, triathletes. But anyway, the point is really, you're just trying to master application of the body to make it optimized. And the missing link and the weak link is never, I don't believe it's the quads or glutes or back. It's just not,
So what do you think is the missing link or the weak link?
It's what I call control training. It's mastering, it's going back and relearning how to control your trunk system the right way. And core work, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means because it's defined differently by all different people.
Yes.
To me, core is any muscle that can make your back move like a chain system is the core. Any muscle that can pull your back on like a chain instead of it, is the core. So really, that's almost really every muscle in your body can make that happen. So you have to relearn mastery from the inside. So, and I do a lot of hands-on muscle activation in those sessions because I'm going back and waking up muscles that the athlete stopped using a long time ago.
Right.
Learned it in infancy, right? All babies go through the same process to get to the end result of walking. They all go, and you can't skip skill steps, right? In that process, babies can't skip a step and jump, right? They have to go through each step. So I go back and teach them the skill development. You have to go through each step. It doesn't take long, but they have to go through it.
Right.
And, so some athletes don't want to do that, but I'm like, you have only 2 options: chain system or straight bar system. That's it. Every human only has 2 options. You decide. You're using A. Here's your result. Why don't you try B and see what happens,
Right. So you kind of go back and revisit some of the neurodevelopmental patterns. Would that be accurate?
This is research I've read, and not an extensive amount, but there's research that's shown that your spine has memory like the brain.
Interesting.
It has memory. So I just go back and it's kind of like, here's a simple analogy I use. It's like, if you ever play with Legos.
Yep.
Like if your spine was those little flat pieces that are long, they're like little skinny guys, and you lay them out like the spine. That's the spine. And then the bricks go on top of along those flat pieces, right? Well, the athlete's missing like 2 or 3 bricks in that chain. I just go back and teach them how to plug those back in wherever they are. They vary in athletes. So I do, I do some hands-on stuff. We weight the stuff up, and then they feel the difference between the chain system and the straight bar system in that session. And once I show them that, I don't have to be there anymore because they get it. It's like it just wakes back up,
Right.
And so, and again, I can't prove this, but there is research that's shown that the spine has memory, and I believe that because it comes back so quickly.
Right. Very cool.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. You're helping to reawaken some muscles that might be, inhibited or dormant, and then getting the nervous system to really use the whole body.
Or it's just changing the pattern. So the athlete's making the movement happen with the I call it the wrong. It's just the wrong muscle pattern that you're using. They both work. I just believe that the chain system really is a primal survival mechanism. And through most of civilization, you didn't live past 30, so it really didn't matter if you back up on it or you weren't trying to win the Olympics. You were just trying to survive. And so it works. And look, and the spine is meant to move. It was designed that way. Like if you just look at whoever created this incredible tool, the body's an incredible machine. It does have the ability to move a lot, but you also have to, when we're doing these things that we do, we have to look back and see, well, what's the real net goal? I want maximum power, no injury. I don't really want to just go maximum intensity and hope for the best,
right.
Which is the chain system. That's just the truth of the matter.
That's
the chain system, and it works. Like people are doing it all the time, but it's not the best system. So that's why you get those big result changes. They come because I'm just adding that other element that wasn't there. You just weren't using it unknowingly, and so that just helps the athlete excel. And then they're in control. They're empowered to train the right way the rest of their life, regardless of what they're doing, running, rowing, cycling, shoveling snow, raking leaves, whatever you're doing, you start to remaster that control that you lost.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense. So building upon that, you haven't brought it up yet, but do you want to talk about how the Body Bandit fits into that system?
Yeah. So the Body Bandit basically, so I mentioned before, like if you ever follow Tony Robbins,
yes,
like he's a genius guy. But the one thing that always stuck with me about him, he said every human being has a primary question they apply to everything they do, everything that comes into their life, every moment. And I know mine is how to make things more time effective, more time efficient, and more time powerful. It works everywhere except your personal life. It doesn't work so good there. You can't do that, but everywhere else it works. So the body balance system, I have like 12 key exercises I use in that system so the athletes have to go back and do their homework every day to remaster this. So I was doing those for years, but I was just like, there's got to be a better way to do these exercises. So I created the Body Bandit out of that need for me just to make it more effective and more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started, I built the first one a little over 5 years ago, just got the patent through. And so it's been a long process, but I've done a ton of work on it. And I have a number out there, some colleges are now using high school programs, a lot of my private clients. The one thing that I found out, the one thing that's evolved in it is that the tube system actually mimics what your spine should be doing. Your spine should act like that tube system. And the tube system actually gives the athlete, there's a lot of stuff we won't be able to talk about, but it actually helps not only the coach, but the athlete start to remaster this control and apply it at a much higher intensity level. So my hands-on system, it's a little harder to get the same intensity level. They both work awesome. So the story I told you about those Division I college girls, they only did my hands-on system with my hands-on, the singular exercises. They didn't get to the Body Bandit yet, although that would be even another step for them.
Oh wow!
But the Body Bandit evolved out of the same belief that this spine control is the key to all athletic progression. In fact, it actually makes you a better athlete by relearning it. You actually purposely become a better athlete by using the system because now you're making the brawn actually become, the dumb stuff become ridiculously strong, while the trunk system becomes a powerful controller instead of everybody moving. So that's why those, when I test athletes and they're weak in their brawn, I know they're using the chain system.
Right.
Because they're weak.
Right.
They should be weak in those muscles.
Right.
Because their spine's been doing the work for those muscles. They just stay weak, and they'll continue to stay weak until you change the way you apply the force to your body. they shouldn't be weak. If you looked at the rest of their strength, like I've done this with probably 900 Division I athletes. I'd have to go back, and I need an intern to do this. Go back and go through all my data because I have all of it, but it's a lot. But they're still making those errors and poor squat control. Yet they're doing heavy squats and they don't have any trunk control. And so to me, that's almost a sin. It's almost a sin to do that to an athlete, and they're going to get hurt because they're getting even stronger in that brawn, those particular brawn muscles, quads, glutes, and back. The other ones are just getting worse. They're getting weaker and weaker relative to the ones that you're working. So you're almost undoing what you should be doing. You'd be better off not lifting weights in that circumstance until they get control. Right. And so that's what I teach the athletes. I'm like, look, you're going to jump further, way past where you are now. You just got to go through this process.
Right. Be patient. Yeah, be patient and trust it.
It's just remastering skill. Like, so the baby, day 2 baby isn't walking on day 3.
Right.
But you have to go through each skill step. They're going to walk at day 365. So in the chain system, those athletes are at day 365. They're already walking and running around. So they can generate a lot of force. But in the straight bar system, they're back on day 1. They got to go through each step. So I teach them how to go through each step and remaster control. And that's why you get those big result changes, because we're just putting them really at their true potential. They might be at it from a cardio standpoint, like they can bang out at 100%, right? But their musculoskeletal ring is the thing that's holding them back,
That's very cool. Very cool. Very powerful stuff.
Holding them back. So that's always, as far as I can tell, that's always the case. To this point, I haven't seen otherwise yet. But I haven't tested 7 billion people, so I can't really say with 100% authority.
Right, but you have tested upwards of 2,000, so that's a very large, sample size.
Yeah, and that's only athletes. That doesn't include the 10,000 PT clients I've seen in my 25 years as a PT. Right. Well, I don't include them because they don't always give the same feedback, and they don't have the same motivation necessarily. They might, but most of them don't. They just, they want to go back to whatever they're doing. So
right.
Makes sense, though.
It does. Okay, so circling back to rowing, so. In regards to, teaching the athlete the skill of controlling the trunk, is there considerations that you would have in mind for, a sculler versus a sweep rower, or is it the same?
Well, obviously sculling, there really is very, very little trunk rotation.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you have this control, if you teach most of your work in this, what I call straight bar control, that little bit of rotation is irrelevant. It's not really that much force. And the other reality too, and you would know, as a rower, you'd know that rowing isn't really a super intense sport. It's a super volume with moderate intensity sport. It's not like you're lifting really heavy weights and get into some rotation. You might be ripping the ligaments and discs in your back. But that being said, you do tens of thousands of reps with, extra stress on the back of your annulus, you might get a herniated disc over time. It's going to wear out.
Right.
So I think that the nuances between sculling and sweep are probably small. I mean, there's guys at elite level that were only scullers that got herniated discs. No different, because really the most of the injury actually happens in the anterior lateral plane. It's not, it's just typical herniation out the back door. It's going out the back. They're not getting like a lateral herniation, things like that. But that being said, I don't think if you use this control system, it doesn't matter whether you're sweep rowing or sculling. You're going to have just powerful control of your body, and those small rotational amounts aren't that big. I mean, it's not ideal. Like I don't believe in doing all that rotation stuff if you don't have to. But
sure.
We have to in rowing, right?
Oh yeah, that's part of the sport. That's part of the sport.
Yeah, so I don't think that. I think the training it's identical. My system applies to anybody. Really, it doesn't really matter. You're just going to be way better at preventing those injuries by just remastering that straight bar control.
Love it. Okay, so we kind of touched on all the topics. Do you want to talk a little bit more about sort of, I guess some of you gave one sort of case study example with the collegiate rower who had an improvement in her erg time, but kind of what else do you have sort of you've been working on in regards to the Body Bandit and getting that out there. I know I follow you on Instagram, so I know you just attended a conference, I believe, or a seminar. I think, right?
ASCM, American College of Sports Medicine, Yeah, I mean, I wanted to see what would happen in that environment. That's a heavily research. I didn't realize it was mostly research people, not athletes so much. I think it's trying to convince people that something that's like, and again, this isn't my system. I just paid close attention to how nature really works. It's been 25 years of just going through it. But it's just convincing people that something that's so simple could be so powerful. But and you know what I mean? Like it's almost like people don't believe it could be true. So that's kind of the part of my job, like, is to share, because I feel it's my obligation to share what I do because it's very powerful. And it gets great results because I want people to excel. Why shouldn't everybody excel? Right. Why should everybody train without getting injured? Because you really shouldn't be. You can't, and people are quick, because I've had this discussion. Like, I've gone in with many, many top Division I programs. I won't name all the names, and the coaches will ask me to talk to the strength coach. Yet when I come in, they have a 50% injury rate. The previous year, they had 50% of their girls were out 6 weeks or longer in the previous year. Getting, on the spin bike, back injuries. I'm like, I can't have a conversation with that person, because if I tell them it's supposed to be zero, it should be 0 inches. They're not going to listen to me. They're not going to believe that that's true, because they believe that it's such an intense sport that the injuries are kind of inherent to the activity, which really isn't the truth. It's not the truth. The truth is you should be able to handle that and excel without ever getting injured. And that's kind of what my business is about. It's like, look, why not? Everybody should be that way, and then the coaching comes into play, right? Then you can do all the other things that matter. Coaching is a very complex thing. There's so many elements to coaching. I'm just providing a coach with an athlete that's got the 100% toolbox. They start to relearn how to control their body, and then technique changes, and we see technical errors change very quickly with Body Bandit application. So an example is, and I have shots on my Instagram account where I show, if you look at somebody's squats that use their back like a chain system, so let's say they can get to a 90-degree squat on the Body Bandit, the tube will have to move away from them like 8, 10, 12 inches, right, at a given resistance, right? Sure. Then I tell them, all right, now you have to keep the tube on your body because it's going to stop your back from moving like a chain. Then they can only go like a quarter of that movement. Because in the Body Bandit, you're actually pulling yourself down into resistance. As you go deeper into the squat, the resistance is getting greater and greater. So you're actually pulling yourself from the inside into the squat, which requires all those muscles that are asleep on them to work. And so they can't move very low, because now I stop their back from doing all the moving work. Right? But in that 6 or 8 week period, the athlete then all of a sudden, they can start to slowly go lower and lower, and they can get back to the 90 squat. And all their technical errors just corrected on the erg without doing any drill work or coaching. Because you just gave the athlete a better control of their body. They have better, and now you have you can speak the same language to the athlete, because they kind of know what you're talking about now. Right. What does sit up straight mean to an athlete? That could be interpreted 100 different, right? And after 3 strokes, they get fatigued and they go right back to the chain system, which is a survival mechanism, right? You can hang on ligaments. It costs the brain no energy. The energy, like the brain's like, hey, look, save energy. I don't care about quality of movement. That takes too much energy, right? Right. Survival. It's totally, and that's just my belief. After years of doing this, I believe that's a predetermined survival mechanism, and it works. It definitely works. Most people are using it that I can tell. But it's not, if you want quality of movement, power, and maximum potential, it's not the best system. It isn't, because every time I take an athlete to the system, they not only do injuries disappear, but they get more powerful. Erg scores drop, running times get faster, cycling, all improve. So the athletes are really closer to their true potential versus being at wherever they are. It's not that they're not training hard. It's just they're not training effectively for what they really could be doing. Sure. Does that make sense? That makes a lot of sense. And the other thing that's great about the Bandit is the tube actually gives not only the coach a visual, but also gives the athlete. Because if the Body Bandit's fishtailing, or you see it moving away from you, it's easy for somebody to pick up and correct. It's like an intuitive sense, the athlete. Now, it's like the last Instagram account I did, I was in a quadruped position. And I had the tube just run down. Like, I could see if it was fishtailing or making an error. Like, that's coming from this control in here. And then the weak muscles, let's say your hip flexors, hamstrings are weak, you're going to have trouble doing the movement without your back jumping back in, wanting to, jump back in and do the movement for those extremities. So it allows that correction. That's all.
So the body bandit holds the individual, the athlete accountable, and I don't want to use the word forces, but it requires or demands that as they're executing the movement that they have to maintain control of the trunk. So basically between the shoulders and, the hips in that area between there.
Yeah,
Correct.
I think so. So there's 4 levels of exercise on the bandit. Like level 1 exercises go back to the way nature does it, right? You're on the ground.
Okay.
So when you're on the ground doing the body bandit exercises, it automatically kind of creates straight bar control. And now it's hard. Those exercises become hard at the beginning because you just haven't really been using those muscles. So here's an example. If you just looked at current exercise training, like if you did knees to elbow with kipping and moving and all that stuff, that's all chain dominated movement.
Right.
You're not really making those extremities any stronger. You're making your back really strong as a moving worker, which is okay, I guess, if that's what you want to do. But it's ultimately not the strongest way to move. It's just not. So here's an example. Like I could do sit-ups with my back in what I call my ideal spine position, where your back is actually in its lordotic position when you're lying flat. I can go up and down without moving my spine at all. That's really hard to do. Everybody's chaining. They collapse and roll. And are they doing sit-ups? Sure. But is it the most powerful way? Not really.
Right.
It's not. So, so you're trying to teach the athlete that it's going to be a lot harder initially because you're really weak in those, but the net result on the back end is a massive change. So the band, it just allows it just allows you to teach quicker to the user versus me doing my hands on, which for somebody who's got chronic injuries is a necessity because their error is so big. Right. They need to go back and get just a tune up, whereas somebody who's not injured to jump on the body bandit, it's forcing them to do what they need. It doesn't matter if they don't need to understand why. It's automatically doing it for the most part. Not there are some coaching elements there. You need coaching and so I have like a certification program because there's some things you have to watch out for because your body will still try to go back to the survival mechanism. Right. Even in some of the stand-up exercises where you're free, open moving system. So anyway, I start on the ground like nature. You get strong down there first for a few weeks and you start to get the straight bar control. Then you come up off the ground and then the movements get more and more complex. Like me doing the standing running one, that's a very hard exercise to do if you've never done it before. Where you're actually doing the same exact EMG pattern as a running stride, exactly the same.
Wow.
You can move through the whole range of motion. So, but you have to have massive straight bar control to be able to stand on that one foot and swing through the whole thing. So it's just the evolution of kind of that control. Like that's just, like for me, I like to go through all these different planes of movement, lateral plane, sagittal, coronal. It doesn't matter. You can work on all those planes and you're just always teaching the spine to be the straight bar controller. Always. So that's over time, you just get way, way better at it. So then you can excel and do all that other stuff, whatever you do.
Right.
You want to heavy weights? Go ahead. You want to, and I don't lift weights anymore. I stopped 9 years ago, but one of my clients, he plateaued at 275 on a squat. He was an arena football kicker who I got out of chronic back pain doing my hands-on process first. He went back to heavy lifting, plateaued at 275. He was on the bandit for 5 weeks. He jumped from 275 to, I think, 320 in 5 weeks.
Wow.
He plateaued, so he stopped.
Yeah.
And he said, look, it gave me even more control of my trunk. That was what was holding me back from squatting. It wasn't his quads or his glutes.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
no, it totally does. I get it.
I can't say that personally because I don't do that anymore, but I know that he understood it. And I didn't say a word to him. That was his observation without me saying a word to him, which was, kind of cool to see that you could still make even, changes. And that goes back to what you had asked about, like the women's athletes. And like, it's even harder for them because their legs are stronger than men's proportionally. And now they got a smaller abdominal wall. So they have to work on control even more.
Right.
To get to the next level, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Bob, that's great. So we've touched on all the topics that we had down. Is there anything before we kind of move into, I have each guest do a rapid fire. Is there anything else that you want to include or summarize for the audience before we move into rapid fire?
I guess it just, to me as a professional, I always try to share that, when you're doing something, you're coaching, that you just always think about asking why and asking better questions to get a better result and not be kind of on the status quo or in your comfort zone. Right. So because I've done this with a lot of coaches are resistant, and I've actually coached dispute what I teach because they're protecting what they've taught all along, which wasn't really right. They're protecting their position because they don't want to go back and have to correct all that. I'm like, you got to get uncomfortable if you want to be a champion. That's just the way it is.
Right.
Whether it's sports or coaching. So you have to sometimes take a step back and say, hey, look, I don't know everything. I'm learning every time I work with a client. Every time I work with a new client, I learn something that I didn't know. And I'm always looking out for whatever that is. So I think that's really, for me, sharing this is really, it's just an evolution of really training performance, but also, kind of asking the better questions and asking why, and not just being like periodizing stuff and going for PRs and all that stuff is great. But really you need to go back and get the base stuff down first before you worry about all what I call the beautification stuff. The beautification stuff's great, but like if you're getting half your athletes are getting hurt, is that really, are you asking the question, why is anybody getting hurt? That's, to me, they should never be hurt. They shouldn't really be hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Excellent. So we're going to move into the rapid fire. So these are questions I ask each guest. These are a lot of fun, kind of helps give the audience a little bit more perspective on your experiences and your wisdom. Mm-hmm. So here we go. So first question. So Bob, given your current knowledge level and your experiences over the course of your athletic career and as a practitioner, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself 20 years ago?
Wow, that's a tough question. If I had to, and this is just on a personal front.
Sure.
And now I truly always go with your intuition on something.
Okay.
Because there's times when I did, and ended up being a huge mistake in my career. It cost me the Olympic medal. Like when I stuck to the loyalty over intuition, so anyway, I think that when you have an intuitive sense about something, you should go for it because it's something beyond where you are. And it's coming from somewhere else, right? And
right.
You need to listen to that because that's really how my business evolved. Like I started listening, like I'm just kind of like a robot and somebody's giving me information and guiding me to this.
Sure.
And so anyway, I think that would be my thing would be if I paid attention to my intuition more carefully, I would have probably made less mistakes. Although maybe the mistakes are what I needed to learn. I don't know.
Right. No, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. If you had to pick one, what's your favorite strength training exercise?
Well, now I only train on the body, man.
Yeah, I know. So I'm waiting for
all those exercises.
Yeah.
Oh boy, man, this is tough. Yeah, here's the thing though. I would have to do. It couldn't be just one exercise because you have to do elevation and compression movements. So it'd have to be two movements.
Okay. Right. Because you're balancing. You're doing.
Yeah, you're going
opposite.
elevation work and compression work. So you're working straight bar, but you need to go both ways to keep real true balance. So
sure.
How about a combo?
Yeah, for sure.
I would say. Yeah, we like the elevation thruster and then the pull down squat down.
Okay.
I mean, if you just had to do one thing, that would be probably the most effective.
Okay.
Although, unfortunately, that's not really what I believe, but because you got to work all these different planes. However, that would be the one. So,
okay.
So it would be working straight bar control with those movements. Yes.
Awesome. I can pull those up on Instagram and find them, and then and then on the episode on my website, I can actually link to those Instagram videos so they can see it, so they'll be able to see the demonstration.
Yeah. Okay. Although it's probably like 50 movements I would do in there. I wouldn't pick one, but all right. So anyway, go ahead.
No, it's all good. Yeah, it'll give the audience a chance if they're not familiar with the body band to see it in action. So it'll be good.
Yeah. Awesome.
So how has your training changed today compared to 20 years ago?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I train very little time-wise, but it's very effective training. I think probably, but even 20 years ago, like the end of my career, 97 to 2000, I trained the least amount possible. So kind of, it really fits into that model. But now I don't do any extremism stuff. I don't believe that that's the best way to handle your body. I just do.
No, when you say extremism, you're talking about sort of the level you would need to be at if you were competing, at the Olympic or elite level, like where you're really pushing your body. you mean you're not doing that anymore, correct?
Not even close. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's also just kind of like, I don't believe, so it's more, I wanted to, if you do very effective movements, you don't have to spend a lot of time. It's almost like the 80-20 rule or 90-10 rule. I only need to spend 10% of my time to get 90% of the results I used to get.
Right.
So that's what I do.
Right.
I need the other 10% because I'm not going for, to win another world championship. So to me, it's, like I'm not going to spend 7-8 hours a week training right now. I don't have any interest in doing it. I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours a week training. Sometimes 2.5 will be the most.
Right.
I do very effective, quick workouts just because at this point I'm 52. I don't really need to stay in really fit shape. I don't need to do a lot of work, and I don't want to, I don't want to beat my body up. So that's where you kind of talked about, like, to me, heavy weight training without this balance, you're just bashing your body up.
Yes.
Is it really what you really want to be doing? I don't. To me, it's not a great idea.
Yeah.
If you do both, it works. So anyway, that would be my.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, you want to, you get to that point, you want to just be healthy and be able to move and not like have your joints be limited in range of motion or sore or stiff or any of that stuff. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like really in the end, and this is again, these are my beliefs have changed a lot in training. Mm-hmm. For most athletes. So, and I have it as training manifest it's an older report, but it covers all these concepts. I talk about the cardio ring and the musculoskeletal ring. In every athlete I've ever worked with to this point until they learn my system, the cardio ring is the ring in front, and the musculoskeletal ring is the ring in the back, and the musculoskeletal ring is the one that's holding the cardio ring back. So you can train the cardio ring at 100% with the given musculoskeletal ring. But that's the one that's why you get those jumps. That 718 goes to 655, because all I did was take the musculoskeletal ring and I jumped it in front of the cardio ring, and now you got to train the cardio ring to catch back up.
Right. I get what you're saying. I get that. That's a great visual.
Totally. Everybody's doing it the wrong way that I've seen so far. They just bang the cardio ring into the ground and hope they don't get hurt. But so like with my musculoskeletal ring, because the cardio system is a dumb system. It doesn't know if you're running, rowing, cycling, or swimming. It has no idea. It's just a pump, right?
Right.
And so I can go back and get my cardio ring back up in a hurry because my musculoskeletal ring is so powerful from doing this stuff for the last 10 years. This control, it just comes back like crazy.
Right.
It's like faster than it used to in the past. So I just focus mostly on the musculoskeletal ring because that's the one that gets you in all the trouble, right? The joints wear out the back.
Right.
The cardio ring.
No.
I've tested enough elite runners and cyclists that were a disaster musculoskeletal wise, just weak as could be. Great pump, awesome pump, crappy springs. They just didn't have and if you put that in there, you're going to go so much faster. Running or cycling and
you'll be healthier. You're
not going to get hurt. The only thing that holds you back when you do the system is fatigue.
Okay.
It's fatigue. It's how much can you train and not get exhausted and fall asleep or pass out. It's not, you're not going to get injured. It's like, how much can you handle training? That's really what it comes down to. And that's really so anyway, I just distill it down to I just do very effective training quick. I don't spend more than 20 minutes on a workout pretty much ever anymore.
That's awesome.
Maybe 30 if it's if I'm in a trail running in the horse trails, it's beautiful outside, I might go a little longer just because it's so beautiful outside.
Nice.
So anyway, I didn't mean to hold you up on that.
No, that was great. Okay. What injury have you had and how did that injury affect your training? So you kind of touched on this at the beginning, because that's what kind of segued you into the PT, career and stuff.
I never had an injury that stopped me from training. I had one when I first started with Ego Gringo. I got a rhomboid muscle strain because that was when we first started doing all that crazy weightlifting. I actually tore the muscle.
Wow.
And it was right when he got here, so he didn't speak any English. And he's like, "Oh, I give you a special shot." I'm like, "What?" I said, "I'm going back to Philly." I left. He didn't even know what I was doing. I'm like, "I'm going back to Philly." I had a PT just do ultrasound and that was 3 days and I was back wrong. That was the only injury I ever had that stopped me from wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking those questions because I never really got hurt and you're training crazy. And I was doing things that were starting to fall into this system. As I went along, I was already starting to figure it out. Not to the level I do now, but And look, some people have better genetics. They got better connective tissue. They're making the error. They can handle more abuse.
Right.
They're still making the error. They're just getting away with it.
Right.
right?
Because they can. Because they can.
They can, but it's not. But they're still holding themselves back. That's the thing. Like that's what I try to do is provide them. Like, why not move a little bit further up? Right? Like I said before, why just participate when you can dominate?
I love that one.
Right?
That
like,
one's great.
Like,
That one's great.
Let's go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. What's one thing you feel junior athletes, so high school, 14 to 18, they should be doing more of to complement their training and their health?
Control training. That's it. Skill movement, like it's relearning, remashing the spine control. So St. Joe's Preparatory School is one of my consulting clients. They have 16 body bandits. We take the freshman and sophomore and we make them master control before they touch any weights. And they have to have it down before they go. I don't evaluate all those athletes because there's too many of them, but I teach them this system because a lot of them didn't even play other sports. They weren't a good athlete necessarily as far as like skill sports or court sports, but now they have an option of picking up something new because everybody's at ground zero in rowing, basically.
Right.
In 8th grade. So I just go back and teach them how to be a better athlete and start to remaster control of this trunk system. I don't really necessarily teach them all those elements. I just make them do what they need. They want to lift weights. That's all they care about. Boys just want to lift weights. But my goal is to have them understand how to control the trunk and make the extremities do all the moving work so they don't get injured. So we have extremely low injury rate, very, very, we have a few kids, but they don't listen there's always kids that aren't going to listen to what you're doing.
Sure.
Because I don't know anything.
Right.
What do I know?
Right.
That's the high school kids. But that's being said, that's really the key to every athlete in the United States is going back and relearning this control. Because a lot, and I could tell you this I have gone back in the PT world the last year to promote this body bandit and my hands-on system. I've covered for many, many therapists who are they're just the right exercise, right identify weakness, but they're still using the users using the chain system. It's the wrong application. So and I've had other athletes in that group too, the high school kids. It dramatically changes their performance in a very short period of time just by waking them up to it. They start to understand. So my goal as a coach for high school athletes is why not teach them this now?
Right.
Why wait till they're right. Because that's where they need it the most. Because I do probably 30% of my business of athletes that come that already have injuries are high school athletes that come to me privately from all over the U.S. and Canada. They'll come. Because I've been doing this for a long time. But you're going to get rid of everything.
That's awesome. That's great.
Because I didn't make the system up. It's really nature's system, powerful system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's really my goal as a coach is to teach them how to be remaster control and be the best athlete they can be, whatever that is. They might not have a great cardio pump, so whatever. Just you're at your true potential, whatever that might be. So anyway, that's really the key for any coach to be thinking about that first. Not all that skill development on the outside where it's all this extra movement, doing like all these aggressive things, box jumps and speed ladders, but they're using a chain system the whole time. Well, it's not the best way. It's just not. And it's not that they're not doing it purposely. They just don't know what they don't know. So part of what I do, and you're being helpful in this, is trying to teach people to just ask a better question. Like,
yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, Absolutely. Maybe there's a better way to do this. Same drill. It's just going to be more powerful.
Absolutely.
Faster and quicker. So anyway.
Awesome. What's your best tip to improve recovery after a training session?
You really don't want to know, do you?
No, why not? Yeah.
I'm just kidding. So here's something that, and I can say this beyond myself personally. When you start to neurally wake up these other muscles that are asleep, it's the greatest way to recover. It actually energizes your body for recovery.
Oh, so it's almost like an active recovery. Okay.
Totally. Like I know for me, I've been doing it for years. I'm like, man, this is just like you feel a flush of energy going through your body. Even now that I've been doing this for years, as you keep the spine as massive control and you wake up you keep those other muscles moving. Because really, when you look at how you move against gravity, you're only working a couple muscles when you're walking around all day, quads, glutes, and back. And when you do use your legs to swing through on hip flexion, you're actually using your back. Because you didn't really learn control, you're not using your hip flexion. Because I test it all the time. So it actually starts to wake things back up that actually helps you recover quicker from training. So whether you're lifting weights or cycling or rowing or running, it doesn't matter. Like, and I've had many clients say the same thing without me saying anything. They're like, man, this is like, I just feel like I'm energized because you're neurally stimulating these systems that you have stopped using for a long time. Or you're just re-energizing them every time you go back. So let's say you rode, for instance. you did 1,500 strokes in a workout, it's mostly quads, glutes, and back on a drive. Recovery, you're not really, if you're using chain system, you're not using those hamstrings and hip flexors. You're really not using them. You're mostly using your back to pull yourself forward. It helps you recover from that because you start to just get those other things back online. It's like plugging those Lego bricks back in.
Right.
Plug them all in, and now the circuit's complete. So from a recovery standpoint, that's what I believe is from a musculoskeletal standpoint. I mean, there's other things, nutrition and all that. I'm sure we both know about, but I don't think that's why we're here talking about that stuff.
Right. Do you think, as you mentioned a couple of times, like waking up the muscles that are asleep, so to speak, do you think that's a result of the fact that we sit more than ever now?
Yep. Here's one of the things that I know. So, like, being a PT for 25 years, my kids are in their teens, and then a couple one's 9. I pay close attention to how they move all the time. They still make the chaining errors now. Like, I correct them now, and they actually listen to me more. But they make the same error, and I've been trying to figure out why that isn't. Sitting's the only thing I could come up with because it is totally not a natural position.
Right.
Like if you look at human civilization evolution, hunter-gatherers were like walking 10 or 15 miles in a day. They weren't sitting down on a rock. They were chasing their food,
Yep. Squatting.
They had this, I don't know, you may have seen it, I won't go too far off the path, but they had a guy who tracked the last of the Kalahari for 2 years.
Yeah.
He followed them around. He watched how they hunted. They basically hunted they'd have 10 guys would follow this pack of deer, and they would just follow the one guy that started fatigue. They would just keep wearing him out.
Yes.
So if the thing just exhausted and fell down, they didn't have to have any weapons. But they were running all day. It wasn't hard running. They weren't going fast.
But they were moving all the time.
All along, right? And so I think that, you're right. I believe it too. I think sitting creates that chain system. It's easy to sit on ligaments and hold yourself up with no energy. It doesn't take any energy, right? So even in a human standing, they can just sit on their front hip labrum ligaments, buckle their knees back and sit on the back of the knee ligaments and just sway your hips forward, and you're just kind of hanging there and ligaments are holding you up. There's no muscle activity. If you don't get in an athletic position, it's like so energy efficient, and your brain loves that.
Yeah, because the brain's lazy. It wants to do the easiest thing.
I think the primal, not the secondary brain, the frontal cortex. I think it's your survival mechanism brain that does that. It's just like it's just built into us to survive, right? To survive, but we could eat 6 times a day,
right?
Like back 1,000 years ago, I might not eat for 3 days, so that was a pretty relevant thing, right? To be energy efficient, but you weren't going to live past 30 probably anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
You're not going to need a knee replacement at 30. You're going to be dead. So anyway, I think that's part of the job is to enlighten people to start to understand really how the body works. And that's what the hands-on process, I wake those things up. And once the athlete feels it once, I've just showed them the roadmap on how to do it. They don't need to see me again necessarily because they already felt it on the inside. I can't describe it in a million words. Even in my products, I pull my digital products off that I use for my body balance system because if I gave them to somebody, they're using the chain system when they do the exercises. Right exercises, wrong application. I can't ethically, it's not, I just don't feel comfortable with that. I give the product to people who've been through my process because it's extra information, but they mostly felt it on the inside of their body. And that's kind of what the bandit starts to do. It starts to wake you up and energize those things that you forgot about, and it just makes everybody excel, right? So then you could do all the other coaching. Like people that get worried about this stuff, it's like, listen, this is one element of coaching. You're just making your athlete have the best toolbox. Now you got to do all the other coaching.
Right.
That's a lot of work,
Right.
I can't do that. I mean, I could, but I just don't have any interest because it's a lot of work to do all those other things, But so anyway, that's really what I do is just give the athlete their best, their 100% toolbox so they can go kick butt and not get injured and be empowered to do their own, they understand. It's not like somebody could tell you something that's wrong on the outside, but you already know that that's not right. That's what I try to teach them. Like, it's not that somebody's trying to hurt you. They're just doing what they know, and that's okay. But I'm teaching you what's really the truth, and I didn't make this up. It's not because it works with every athlete. So even when I started going through these hands-on process with these Division I athletes, I would go in and do 4 evaluations, and I would teach mostly on the girl side because they have the funds to do it. So I would teach them this straight bar control system in a group of 4. But I would have them do the movement first using their own system, their chain system. And I would ask them to pay attention to what muscle activity they'd feel in the movement. Let's say it was a physio ball bridge. against the wall. And then they're all over the place. Some people feel it here, some feel it there, some feel it in the back, some in the glutes, some in the hamstring, wherever it is. Then I go back and I teach them the shape bar system, and it always comes in the same muscle every single time with every single athlete I've ever done. In every movement I do, every single one, every single time. It's high school, college, elite, NFL, same thing. That's when I really started to recognize that it's not just guesswork. This is powerful stuff because it's the same every single time.
Right. It's consistent.
And it's just at the point even when I go and do these PT classes, in 40 minutes, I can get them like, it's totally different exercise. They were taught something, same exercise movement, wrong application, totally different movement, totally different where they feel it, way harder to do. So let's say they were doing a side leg lift, they've been using their back to lift their leg up forever. When I stop their back from doing the lifting work, they can't even lift their leg up, or it's so hard to hold their leg up for even a few seconds because their gluteus medius just hasn't even asked it to work. Right. You've actually been doing the work. So both systems work, just how long is it going to take before your back gets sore or blown out?
Right.
It's common, right? It's common.
Like you said, it's a question of when, not if.
When. It's not if. It's going to happen. And that's what you don't want. That's really what the crux of my business is. Why not train at the best you could do? And then you could do all the other coaching, because that's what makes it awesome. Like, there's so many other elements to coaching that we're not even talking about. I'm just laying the foundation for other coaches to just crush it, not just be guessing, because doesn't work for me. I don't want guesswork. I want 100%. I want to know it's going to work, not
definitive.
Yeah, or, it's sort of like there's a lot of programs out there in the rowing world, and maybe the same as cycle. They just work on this crazy cardio ring stuff. I hear it. Customers come in, they're falling apart. I'm like, yeah, you're working on the wrong system. Right. You need to be working on this system. That'll come around later on, it'll come around later on.
Absolutely.
Anyway, does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. It makes a ton of sense. 2 more questions. So if you had to pick one, all right, you sit down, what's your favorite meal?
It can include everything in it? Let's see. I like favorite meal. God, like a chicken marsala would be pretty good. I like meat. I like meat and I like vegetables. So chicken marsala maybe on a big thing of salad with some nuts and fruit and stuff like that.
Awesome.
I'm kind of more like I've evolved into not eating all the carbs anymore because we don't train anymore.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, kind of that kind of stuff, something like that. Yeah,
awesome. Okay, final question.
Yep.
What's one book everyone should read?
How about The Injury-Free Season? That's my book. It's a book I wrote. I actually I've written it, but I haven't published it yet. But I actually would share it with people if they wanted to read it. It kind of goes through this. It's like me. I did a 6-hour taping of me talking to a client, as if I was taking through a hands-on process.
Very cool.
But if there's other books, there's a lot of other books I could share. Like yourself, I read a lot of books. But
when's that one coming out?
I just sent it out to a publisher, but I'm not sure how long it's going to take. But I would, if somebody really wanted to read the unedited copy, I would share it with them.
Okay.
If you pass along any, my just email address.
Yep. Well, in the show notes, I'm going to include, a backlink to, your social media stuff as well as your website and everything. So if you want me to put it up in the show notes, I'm more than happy to. That's totally your call though, because you are going to publish it and stuff. So
yeah, I think that there's the training manifest I actually have on my front of my website.
Okay. I
got to reload that, but that goes to the basic. It's like 14 pages of kind of going through this, the body balance process and the chain straight bar control. Kind of goes through that, the rings and all that. It just gives it basic. It opens people's eyes to kind of a different way to think about how to train the body.
Absolutely. Awesome. Bob, this has been a blast, a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience of training at the elite level, as well as, all your experience over the last 25 years of being a physical therapist and working with thousands of individuals and athletes.
Cool. Yeah. I appreciate you having me on. And it's great to share. And you're doing good stuff. So it's good to share,
Yeah. It's all about helping people get better.
Yep. Awesome.
Thanks, Bob. Just hang on the line. Let me give you a proper goodbye and we'll wrap this episode up. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Leo Training Podcast. I would greatly appreciate it if you would take a moment of your time and head on over to iTunes to write a 5-star review. Please be sure to tune in next week as I have a brand new episode and we will be switching gears back to the strength and conditioning side on the content front. My guest will be Luca Cursor. He's a Strong First Level 2 kettlebell instructor, as well as a Strong First bodyweight instructor and a flexible steel instructor. We will spend a large chunk of our time discussing how flexibility and mobility training can enhance your strength training.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.